The first thing Dr. Sarachin noticed when she stepped off the transport shuttle wasn't the acrid smell of plasma burns or the twisted metal wreckage scattered across the battlefield. It wasn't even the eerie silence that had settled over what was once a thriving Kethvar colony world. It was the sound of labored breathing coming from beneath a collapsed communication tower. "Medical team, over here," she called, adjusting her environmental suit's audio pickup. The breathing was rhythmic, but strained, definitely indicating a living creature in distress. Her team of battlefield medics had been deployed to Zirian Prime as part of the Galactic Medical Relief Corps, a joint human-alien humanitarian organization that provided aid in conflict zones across known space. The war between the Kethvar Empire and the Zephyrian Collective had been raging for 3 standard years now. Both species were far more technologically advanced than humanity, which had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. But humans had something neither side possessed: complete neutrality and an inexplicable drive to help those in need, regardless of species or political affiliation. "What do you see, Doc?" called Marcus Rodriguez, her field assistant, as he carefully moved debris aside. The collapsed tower was a maze of bent alloy struts and shattered crystal components that had once been part of the planet's primary communication array. Sarah aimed her scanner toward the source of the breathing. The readings made her pause. Massive life form. Definitely not Kethvar or Zephyrian. Heart rate elevated, but stable. Multiple fractures detected. She frowned at her scanner's display. "Marcus, we're going to need the heavy lifting gear." As her team worked to clear the debris, Sarah caught glimpses of what lay trapped beneath. Dark fur matted with dried blood. Powerful limbs that spoke of incredible strength. When they finally freed the creature's head, Sarah gasped. The being before her was unlike anything in the galactic databases. It stood nearly 3 meters at the shoulder, with a body structure that seemed part wolf, part bear, and part something entirely alien. Its fur was midnight black with silver markings that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. But what struck Sarah most were its eyes, intelligent, alert, and filled with a mixture of pain and wariness. "Easy there, big fellow," Sarah whispered, slowly approaching with her medical scanner. The creature's ears, which were more pointed than any Earth animal, tracked her movement, but it made no aggressive gestures. "We're here to help." The scanner revealed the extent of its injuries. 3 broken ribs, a fractured left foreleg, severe dehydration, and what appeared to be plasma burns across its right flank. But most concerning were the artificial implants the scanner detected throughout its nervous system. "Marcus, take a look at this," Sarah said, sharing her scanner data. "These neural implants, they're military grade. This creature is a soldier." Marcus studied the readouts with growing amazement. "A war dog? But whose? These implants don't match Kethvar or Zephyrian technology." Before Sarah could respond, the creature made a sound, not a growl or bark, but something almost like speech. Its throat worked as if trying to form words, and the neural implants in its brain showed increased activity on Sarah's scanner. "It's trying to communicate," she breathed. "The implants must include some kind of translation matrix." The sound came again, clearer this time, and Sarah's universal translator finally found a pattern it could work with. A deep, resonant voice emerged from her comm unit speakers. "Leave me here." Sarah felt her heart skip. "You can understand us?" The massive head nodded slightly. "Yes, I am Korthak, Warbond of the..." The translation faltered for a moment before continuing. "Of the Lost Pack. The battle is finished. I have failed in my duty." "What's a warbond?" Marcus asked quietly. Before Sarah could speculate, Korthak answered. "I am bred for war, enhanced for killing. My pack leaders are dead. My purpose is ended." The creature's eyes closed in what seemed like resignation. "Leave me to join them in the great hunt." Sarah exchanged a look with Marcus. Neither of them had expected to find a sentient being among the wreckage, let alone one that spoke of duty and honor like a human soldier. "Korthak," Sarah said gently, "we're medical personnel. We help anyone who's injured, regardless of who they are or what side they fought on. Will you let us treat your wounds?" The alien war dog's eyes opened again, studying Sarah with an intensity that made her feel as though she was being measured and weighed. You are human? Yes. I'm Dr. Sarah Chun, and this is Marcus Rodriguez. We're part of a medical relief team. I have heard of humans, Korthak said slowly. The soft-skins who fight wars with words instead of claws. Who heal enemies instead of consuming them. There was something that might have been confusion in his voice. Why would you aid me? I am not your pack. Sarah knelt beside the massive creature, noting how he flinched slightly when she moved closer. Because you're hurt, and we can help. That's all the reason we need, even though I am designed to kill. Especially because of that. Sarah began unpacking her medical supplies. Everyone deserves a chance to be more than what they were designed for. As Sarah worked to stabilize Korthak's injuries, she learned more about his species through fragments of conversation. The Vorthak, as they call themselves, were an ancient warrior race that had been conquered and enslaved by a species called the hegemony centuries ago. Through selective breeding and genetic modification, the hegemony had turned them into the perfect soldiers, intelligent enough to understand complex tactics, loyal to the point of death, and physically capable of taking on multiple opponents in close combat. Korthak's pack had been hired as mercenaries by the Kethvar Empire, not because the Empire couldn't fight its own battles, but because the Vorthak were so feared that their presence alone often ended conflicts before they began. They were weapons of psychological warfare as much as physical. How many were in your pack? Sarah asked as she administered pain medication that her scanner indicated would be compatible with his alien physiology. 12, Korthak replied. I was the youngest. This was to be my proving battle. His voice carried a note of bitter irony. I proved only that I could survive while my pack brothers died. Survival isn't failure, Marcus interjected. Sometimes it's the hardest thing of all. Korthak's ears flicked in what Sarah was beginning to recognize as a gesture of skepticism. You do not understand the way of the pack. We are born to die in battle. To live when others fall is shame beyond bearing. Sarah paused in her work, meeting Korthak's gaze directly. Where I come from, we believe that living gives you the chance to honor those who died, to carry on their memory, and maybe prevent others from suffering the same fate. Human philosophy, Korthak said, but there was less dismissal in his tone than before. The medical treatment took several hours. Sarah and her team had to improvise solutions for alien anatomy that no human had ever treated before. The plasma burns were particularly challenging, as the energy weapon had cauterized the wounds in a way that prevented natural healing. They had to carefully debride the damaged tissue and apply synthetic skin grafts designed for carbon-based life forms. Throughout the process, Korthak remained conscious and alert, watching everything they did with intense curiosity. He asked questions about their medical techniques and seemed particularly fascinated by their approach to pain management. Your species treats pain as something to be eliminated, he observed as Sarah injected him with another dose of analgesics. When possible, yes. Pain serves a purpose. It tells us something is wrong. But chronic pain just makes healing harder. The hegemony taught us that pain is weakness leaving the body, that embracing it makes us stronger. Sarah paused, her medical scanner forgotten in her hand. That's a convenient philosophy for someone who wants to use you as a weapon. But pain is just information. What you do with that information is what defines strength. Korthak was quiet for a long moment, processing this. You speak strangely for a soft skin. Are all humans like you? Marcus laughed. Sarah's one of a kind, but we all have our own way of being stubborn about helping people. As the local star began to set, casting long shadows across the battlefield, Sarah's team had managed to stabilize Korthak's condition. His ribs were splinted, his foreleg was in a cast made from hardening biofoam, and his burns were covered with healing accelerators. But the biggest challenge still lay ahead. Korthak, Sarah said carefully, our ship can provide better medical care than we can give you here. Will you come with us? The war dog's ears flattened against his skull. To what purpose? I have no pack, no masters to serve. I am a weapon without a hand to wield me. Maybe that's exactly what you need to be, Sarah replied. Maybe it's time to decide what you want to be instead of what others made you. I was not made to choose. But you're choosing right now, Marcus pointed out. You could have attacked us, or refused treatment, or given up entirely. Instead, you're here, talking with us, letting us help. Those were all choices you made. Korthak considered this, his intelligent eyes studying the humans who had spent their day saving his life. Finally, he spoke. If I come with you, what happens when I am healed? Sarah smiled. That's up to you to decide. And if I choose poorly, then we'll help you choose better next time. That's what friends do. Friends. The concept seemed to puzzle Korthak. I do not understand this word as you use it. Someone who chooses to care about you without expecting anything in return, Sarah explained. Someone who wants you to be happy and healthy and safe. Korthak's massive head tilted to one side. This exists among humans. It's one of our defining characteristics, Marcus said with a grin. We collect strays. As Sarah's team prepared to transport Korthak to their medical ship, she couldn't help but wonder what they were really doing. They were taking aboard a being specifically engineered for warfare, whose very genetics had been tampered with to make him the perfect killer. Every regulation and safety protocol screamed that this was a terrible idea. But, looking into Korthak's eyes, she saw something that no amount of genetic modification could ever completely eliminate. Hope. It was buried under layers of conditioning and trauma, but it was there. The same spark that made humans reach out to help strangers was somehow present in this alien war dog. The transport to their ship went smoothly, though Korthak's eyes required them to use the cargo bay rather than the standard medical transport pods. He endured the journey with stoic patience, though Sarah noticed his ears constantly swiveling to track sounds, and his nostrils flaring as he processed the unfamiliar scents of the human vessel. Amazing, Dr. Yamamoto, the ship's chief medical officer, muttered as he reviewed Sarah's field notes. The neural implants alone represent technology decades ahead of anything we've seen, and the muscular enhancements, his physical capabilities, must be extraordinary. He's not a test subject, Yama, Sarah warned. He's a patient. Of course. But you have to admit, this is an unprecedented opportunity to learn about how to be a better person, Sarah interrupted. That's the only thing I'm interested in learning. Dr. Yamamoto looked as though he wanted to argue, but something in Sarah's expression made him reconsider. Very well. What's your treatment plan? Physical rehabilitation for his injuries, psychological evaluation to assess the trauma from losing his pack, and Sarah hesitated. I want to see if we can do something about those neural implants. Remove them? Sarah, those implants are integrated into his nervous system. The surgery would be incredibly risky, and we don't even fully understand their function. Not remove them. Modify them. Sarah pulled up a holographic display of Korthak's brain scans. Look at these neural pathways. The implants are suppressing his natural emotional responses and enhancing aggression markers. They're literally preventing him from being anything other than a weapon. And you think we can change that? I think we have a try. Otherwise, we're not really saving him. We're just keeping a weapon in storage. Dr. Yamamoto studied the brain scans, his expression thoughtful. It would take weeks just to understand the implant's architecture, and even then we learn, Sarah said simply. And while we're learning, Korthak gets to experience what it's like to be treated as a person instead of a tool. That night, Sarah found herself unable to sleep. She kept thinking about Korthak's words, I was not made to choose. The casual acceptance of that statement, as if free will was a luxury he had never been allowed to consider, haunted her. She made her way to the medical bay where Korthak was resting. The massive alien was awake, staring at the ceiling with those intelligent eyes. Can't sleep either? Sarah asked softly. I do not understand this place, Korthak replied. There is no scent of fear or aggression, no weapons ready for battle. Yet you travel through space where dangers are many. How do you survive? Sarah settled into a chair beside his medical bed. We survive by working together, by trusting each other, by believing that most beings are good, even when evidence suggests otherwise. That seems inefficient. Maybe, but it's also what makes life worth living. Korthak turned his massive head to look at her directly. Why do you care what happens to me? Your pack leader, your captain, would be justified in spacing me. I'm a danger to your ship. Because everyone deserves a chance to choose who they want to be, Sarah said. And because I think, deep down, you don't want to be a weapon anymore. What if I am wrong about what I want? What if the conditioning is too strong? Sarah smiled. Then, we'll figure out together. That's what friends do. Korthak was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer than Sarah had ever heard it. I have never had a friend before. Well, you have one now. And once we get you healed up and figure out those implants, you might just discover you have a whole ship full of them. As Sarah finally headed back to her quarters, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at a crossroads. Not just for Korthak, but for humanity's relationship with the galaxy at large. If they could prove that even a being engineered for war could choose peace, what might that say about the potential for understanding between species? But first, they had to survive the choice they'd made. Because somewhere in the depths of space, the people who had created Korthak and his pack were going to notice that one of their weapons was missing. And when they came looking for him, Sarah and her team would discover just how far they were willing to go to protect the friendship they'd offered to a creature bred for war. The real test was just beginning. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the medical vessel Hippocrates, watching the stars streak past as they traveled through hyperspace. 3 days had passed since Dr. Chen's team had brought the alien war dog aboard, and already the creature was causing ripples throughout the ship's routine that she couldn't have anticipated. It wasn't that Korthak was causing trouble. Quite the opposite. The massive being had been surprisingly cooperative with the medical staff, almost docile in his acceptance of their care. But his very presence raised questions that Elena wasn't sure she was equipped to answer. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Jackson's voice crackled through her comm unit. You asked to be notified when the morning medical briefing was ready. On my way, Elena replied, taking one last look at the stars before heading to the medical bay. The briefing room was crowded with not just the medical staff, but also representatives from engineering, communications, and security. Elena noticed that Chief of Security Torres looked particularly uncomfortable, his hand never straying far from his sidearm. Dr. Chun stood at the front of the room, displaying holographic brain scans that seemed to shift and pulse with activity. As you can see, Korthak's neural implants are far more sophisticated than we initially realized. They're not just suppressing emotional responses, they're actively rewriting them. Dr. Yamamoto leaned forward in his chair. What do you mean, rewriting? The implants contain what appears to be a complete behavioral modification program. Every time Korthak experiences an emotion or thought that doesn't align with their programming, the implants generate a corrective signal. Over time, this has essentially trained his brain to avoid certain thought patterns entirely. Chief Torres frowned. What kind of thought patterns? Empathy, compassion, self-preservation that conflicts with mission objectives, independent decision-making. Dr. Chun paused, her expression grim. They've turned him into the perfect soldier by systematically removing everything that makes someone an individual. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Can it be reversed? That's what we're trying to determine. Engineer Park has been analyzing the implant architecture, and we think we might be able to modify their function without removing them entirely. Engineer Park, a young woman who looked barely old enough to be out of the academy, stood nervously. The implants use quantum entanglement principles that are, well, they're revolutionary. If we could understand them fully, it would advance human neurotechnology by decades. But the modification process would be incredibly delicate. How delicate? Captain Vasquez asked. One wrong adjustment could leave him catatonic, or it could remove the safeguards that keep his enhanced physical capabilities under control, Park admitted. Chief Torres shifted uncomfortably. Captain, I have to voice my concerns about this entire situation. We have a being aboard this ship who was specifically designed to kill, and we're talking about modifying technology we don't understand inside his brain. This seems like an unnecessary risk to the crew. Before Elena could respond, a new voice spoke from the doorway. The risk is mine to take. Everyone turned to see Korthak, standing in the entrance to the briefing room. Despite his injuries, he moved with a fluid grace that spoke of predatory power. But what struck Elena most was how different he seemed from the broken creature Dr. Chun had described finding on the battlefield. Korthak, Dr. Chun said, standing quickly. You should be resting. I have rested enough. I heard voices speaking of my condition and wished to understand. His golden eyes swept the room, taking in every face, every expression. You fear me. It wasn't a question, and Elena found herself appreciating his directness. Some of us do, yes. Can you understand why? Korthak's massive head nodded slowly. I'm a weapon-given sentence. Your fear is illogical. He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. But I do not wish to be feared. What do you wish? Elena asked. The question seemed to surprise Korthak. His ears flicked back, and forth in what Dr. Chun had learned was a sign of confusion or uncertainty. I do not know. The implants make it difficult to know what thoughts are mine and what thoughts are programmed. Dr. Chin stepped forward. That's exactly why we want to try to modify them, to give you the chance to find out who you really are underneath all that conditioning. Chief Torres cleared his throat. With respect, Doctor, shouldn't our priority be finding out more about where he came from? If his handlers come looking for him, we need to be prepared. Korthak's expression darkened. The hegemony will not come for me. I am now damaged goods, a fail weapon. They will have already written me off as a loss. You're sure about that? Elena asked. The hegemony does not waste resources on sentiment. If they believed I could be salvaged, they would not have left me on the battlefield. Korthak's voice carried a note of bitter certainty. I am free because I'm worthless to them now. Engineer Park spoke up hesitantly. The neural implants, they're definitely hegemony technology. I've been cross-referencing them with our intelligence databases. The quantum entanglement principles they use. Captain, this technology could revolutionize not just medical science, but communications, computing, everything. Elena could see where this was heading, and she didn't like it. Are you suggesting we should study Korthak's implants for the technology? I'm suggesting that understanding this technology could benefit all of galactic civilization, Park replied. These implants represent a level of neural interface sophistication that was used to enslave an entire species, Dr. Chun interrupted sharply, to rob them of their free will and turn them into weapons. But if we could adapt it for beneficial purposes, no. The voice that cut through the debate was Korthak's, deep and final. I've seen what the hegemony does with such knowledge. They would find ways to use it for control, even if you created it for healing. Elena studied the alien war dog carefully. Despite his obvious physical power and the technology embedded in his brain, there was something fundamentally honest about him that she found compelling. Korthak, what do you know about the hegemony's other operations? Other species they've enslaved? Much. The Vorthak were not their first conquest, nor their last. They are patient. They study a species for generations before they move, learning weaknesses, identifying key individuals to target or corrupt. Korthak's eyes met Elena's directly. They have been watching humanity for 30 of your years. The briefing room fell silent. Elena felt her blood turn to ice water. Watching us how? Observers, scientists, infiltrators sometimes. They are particularly interested in human emotional responses and pack bonding behaviors. They believe these represent exploitable weaknesses. Chief Torres leaned forward intently. Do you know specifics? Names, locations, planned operations? Some. The implants store mission briefings and intelligence updates. But accessing that information, Korthak hesitated. It would require activating systems that might override the progress Dr. Chun has made in reducing the behavioral conditioning. Dr. Chun looked stricken. You mean the information is there, but getting to it could undo everything we've accomplished so far? Or worse, the hegemony builds safeguards into their neural modifications. Attempting to access classified information might trigger a security protocol that would. Korthak searched for the right words. Eliminate the storage device. Kill you, Elena said bluntly. Yes. The room fell silent again as everyone processed this information. Elena found herself facing a decision that felt impossibly complex. They had aboard their ship not just a traumatized alien warrior, but potentially a source of intelligence about a threat to humanity that they'd never even known existed. But accessing that information could cost Korthak his life or his sanity. There has to be another way, Dr. Chun said finally. Some method of accessing the information without triggering the safeguards. Engineer Park was already pulling up holographic displays of the neural implant architecture. Maybe if we could isolate the memory storage components from the behavioral modification systems. The systems are integrated, Korthak said quietly. The hegemony learned long ago that keeping them separate made the implants vulnerable to tampering. Everything is connected to everything else. Captain Vasquez stood up, her decision made. This is what we're going to do. Dr. Chun, you're going to continue your work on modifying the behavioral conditioning implants. That remains our first priority. Engineer Park, I want you to work with Dr. Chun to see if there's a safe way to access any non-classified information in those memory banks. Anything that might help us understand hegemony operations without triggering security protocols. She turned to address Korthak directly. And you're going to rest, heal, and start learning how to be something other than a weapon. The intelligence you carry might be valuable, but your life and freedom are more important. Korthak's ears perked up in surprise. You would place my welfare above information that could protect your species? Yes, Elena said simply. Because that's what makes us human. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly the strength the hegemony doesn't understand. As the briefing broke up, Elena noticed that Chief Torres lingered behind. She could read the concern in his expression. You have something to say, Chief? Permission to speak freely, Captain? Always. Torres took a deep breath. I think we're making a mistake. This alien, Korthak, he seems decent enough, but we're taking enormous risks based on very little information. We don't know if his personality changes are genuine or if they're part of some deeper programming. And now we're talking about potentially compromising our own security to help him when we've just learned that his creators have been spying on humanity for decades. Elena nodded slowly. Those are all valid concerns, Chief. But consider this. If the hegemony has been watching us for 30 years, they already know most of what they want to know about us. Keeping Korthak's information locked away isn't going to protect us from that threat. But it might protect us from him. Maybe. Or maybe the best protection we have is proving that our way of doing things, compassion, cooperation, treating others with dignity regardless of their origins, is stronger than their way. Elena paused. Besides, if we start treating Korthak as a potential threat rather than someone who needs help, we become a little more like the hegemony ourselves. Torres didn't look entirely convinced, but he nodded. Understood, Captain. I'll make sure security keeps a discreet eye on things, but we won't interfere unless there's a clear threat. That's all I ask. Later that evening, Elena found herself in the medical bay again. It was becoming a habit, these visits to check on their unusual patient. She found Korthak awake, as he usually was, staring at a portable data pad that Dr. Chun had given him. What are you reading? Elena asked. Korthak looked up, his expression thoughtful. Dr. Chun suggested I learn about human culture. This document discusses something called friendship. It is puzzling. How so? The concept of forming emotional bonds with individuals who provide no tactical advantage or genetic benefit. Among the Vorthak, pack bonds serve survival purposes. But human friendship seems to exist simply for its own sake. Elena smiled. That's a pretty good summary, actually. What puzzles you about it? The document mentions that friends sometimes sacrifice for each other, even when no logical benefit exists. That they choose to help each other despite potential costs. Korthak's golden eyes met Elena's. Your crew is demonstrating this behavior toward me. Why? Elena considered the question seriously. Because we believe everyone deserves a chance to choose who they want to be. And because sometimes doing the right thing is more important than doing the safe thing. Even when the right thing is dangerous. Especially then, Korthak was quiet for a moment, processing this. Dr. Chun believes she can modify my implants within the next few days. She says the procedure will be challenging. Are you concerned? Yes, but not in the way you might expect. Korthak set down the datapad and shifted his massive bulk to face Elena more directly. I'm concerned about what I might discover about myself. What if, without the conditioning, I'm still a creature of violence? What if the hegemony simply enhanced what was already present in my nature? Elena felt a deep sympathy for the alien warrior. Then, we'll deal with that if it happens. But I don't think it will. How can you be certain? Because a creature of pure violence wouldn't be asking these questions. Wouldn't be concerned about the answer. Elena leaned back in her chair. The fact that you're worried about what you might become tells me everything I need to know about what you really are. That night, Dr. Chun ran final diagnostics on modifications she and Engineer Park had developed for Korthak's neural implants. The plan was elegantly simple in concept, but terrifyingly complex in execution. They would use the implant's own quantum entanglement properties to create new neural pathways that bypass the behavioral conditioning subroutines. The quantum resonance frequencies have to be perfect, Park explained, reviewing the calculations for the 100th time. If we're off by even a fraction of a percent, we could cause permanent neural damage. And if we don't try at all, Korthak remains a prisoner in his own mind, Dr. Chen replied. I've seen the brain scans, Park. Every day, those implants remain active. They're reinforcing the conditioning. If we wait much longer, the modifications might become irreversible. Park nodded reluctantly. I know. I've never worked on anything like this before. The responsibility is overwhelming. Dr. Chin put a hand on the younger woman's shoulder. The best engineers I know are the ones who understand the weight of what they're doing. That's what makes them careful enough to succeed. As they made final preparations for the procedure, neither of them noticed the small diagnostic routine that activated deep within Korthak's neural implants. The routine was designed to monitor for exactly the kind of modifications they were planning, and it had been silently gathering data about their ship, their crew, and their intentions. Somewhere in the depths of space, a hegemony monitoring station received an automated signal. The message was brief, but significant. Asset recovery may be possible. Target vessel identified. Human medical ship, registration CNS Hippocrates. Minimal defensive capabilities. Recovery operation recommended. The station's artificial intelligence processed the information and began formulating a response plan. The Vorthack designation Korthak had been written off as a combat loss, but if humans were attempting to modify hegemony neural technology, that changed everything. The technology itself was worth recovering, and the humans who had seen it were a security risk that needed to be eliminated. Within hours, a hegemony recovery vessel would be dispatched. Its mission would be simple: retrieve the neural implant technology and eliminate any witnesses. The humans aboard the Hippocrates had made themselves targets the moment they decided to help a wounded alien warrior, but they didn't know it yet. Meanwhile, aboard the medical ship, Korthak lay in the surgical bay as Dr. Chun made final preparations for the procedure. The massive alien warrior had been sedated, but his enhanced physiology meant he remained partially conscious. How are you feeling? Dr. Chun asked, checking the neural interface connections one more time. Strange, Korthak replied, his voice slurred slightly by the sedatives. I can sense the implants preparing for something. There is activity in systems that have been dormant. Dr. Chun frowned, checking her monitors. What kind of activity? Communication protocols. As if the implants are trying to contact something. Korthak's eyes widened suddenly. Doctor, I think. Alarms began blaring throughout the medical bay. The ship's defensive systems had detected an approaching vessel, one that didn't match any known friendly configurations. Captain Vasquez's voice crackled over the comm system. All hands to battle stations. We have an incoming ship of unknown origin and hostile intent. Dr. Chin looked at Korthak, understanding passing between them. They came for you after all. Not for me, Korthak said grimly, struggling against the sedatives to sit up. For the technology, and to eliminate anyone who has seen it. His golden eyes met hers with desperate intensity. Doctor, you must complete the procedure now. If the hegemony recovers me with the implants intact, they will learn everything about your ship, your crew, your species' medical capabilities. The procedure isn't ready. If I try it now, without proper preparation, if you do not try it now, your entire crew will be enslaved or killed. Korthak's voice carried absolute certainty. I know the hegemony protocols. They do not take prisoners when their technology is compromised. Dr. Chun felt her hands shaking as she prepared the neural interface. Everything they had planned, all the careful calculations and safeguards, would have to be abandoned for a desperate improvisation. She looked into Korthak's eyes and saw not just trust, but something approaching faith. "All right," she said, activating the quantum resonance generators. "Let's give you back your freedom." As the procedure began, the alien war dog's neural implants erupted in activity, fighting against the modifications that threatened to break the conditioning of a lifetime. And somewhere in the darkness of space, a hegemony vessel closed in on the small human medical ship, unaware that their perfectly controlled weapon was about to make a choice that would change everything. The quantum resonance generators hummed with increasing intensity as Dr. Chun worked frantically to complete the neural implant modifications. On her monitors, she could see the battle raging inside Korthak's brain, the artificial conditioning systems fighting desperately against the new pathways she was creating. "Neural activity is off the charts," Engineer Park reported, her voice tight with stress. "The implants are drawing massive amounts of power. If this keeps up, they could cause brain damage." "Almost there," Dr. Chun muttered, her hands flying over the controls. "Just need to establish the primary bypass route," and the ship shuddered violently as something struck their hull. Captain Vasquez's voice echoed through the medical bay. "Hull breach on Deck 7. All non-essential personnel to emergency stations." On the surgical table, Korthak's massive body convulsed as the competing systems in his brain reached a critical conflict point. His eyes snapped open, but they weren't the intelligent golden orbs Dr. Chun had come to recognize. Instead, they glowed with an artificial blue light, the sign that the hegemony's control systems had activated. "Primary objective confirmed," Korthak said, but it wasn't his voice. The words came out in a flat, mechanical tone that sent chills down Dr. Chen's spine. "Eliminate compromised biological assets. Secure technology. Prepare for extraction." The restraints holding Korthak to the surgical table snapped like paper as he sat up. Even injured and sedated, his enhanced strength was formidable. But instead of attacking Dr. Chun, he paused, his head tilting as if listening to something only he could hear. "Something's wrong," Park whispered. "The personality matrix is fluctuating. The modifications we made are interfering with the control override." Dr. Chun watched in fascination and horror as Korthak's expression shifted rapidly between the cold calculation of the hegemony's programming and something more familiar: confusion, struggle, and what looked like pain. "I will not," Korthak said, his voice flickering between the mechanical tone and his natural speech patterns. "Cannot comply with." The blue glow in his eyes flared brighter. "Primary directive cannot be overridden." But even as the words left his mouth, Korthak's body language contradicted them. Instead of moving toward Dr. Chun to eliminate her, as the programming demanded, he gripped the edges of the surgical table so hard that the metal began to bend. "Fight it, Dr. Chun urged, slowly reaching for the neural interface controls. "The pathways we created are still forming. You can choose who you want to be." "Choice is an illusion," Korthak replied, but his voice was growing stronger, more recognizably his own. "The hegemony, they made me understand that, but you—" He looked directly at her, and she could see the struggle playing out in his golden eyes as they flickered between natural color and artificial blue. "You showed me something else." Another violent shudder ran through the ship, followed by the sound of plasma fire in the corridors outside. Dr. Chun realized with growing horror that the hegemony forces weren't just trying to recover Korthak. They were systematically eliminating the crew. "The override is failing," Park announced, staring at her readings in amazement. The quantum pathways we established are actually strengthening under stress. It's like his brain is choosing which signals to accept. Korthak's head snapped up, his enhanced hearing picking up sounds the humans couldn't detect. Hegemony assault troops. 12 individuals. They have reached the medical deck. The blue glow was almost gone from his eyes now, replaced by a fierce intelligence that Dr. Chun had never seen before. Not just Korthak's natural awareness, but something enhanced by the modifications they'd made. For the first time, he was experiencing his full mental capacity without the behavioral conditioning systems limiting his thoughts. "They will kill you," he said to Dr. Chun, his voice now completely his own. "All of you. Not just because you've seen their technology, but because you've proven that their control can be broken." Dr. Chun looked at the massive alien warrior, seeing him clearly for the first time. Without the conditioning suppressing his emotions, she could see the depth of intelligence in his eyes, the capacity for both incredible violence and profound gentleness. The hegemony hadn't just enslaved the Vorthak. They had stolen the potential of an entire species. "Then we fight," she said simply. Korthak's ears pricked forward in surprise. "You are not warriors. You are healers. Sometimes they're the same thing." Dr. Chun moved to a storage locker and pulled out a medical laser cutter, checking its power settings. Sometimes healing means protecting what you care about. The sound of plasma fire was getting closer now, and Dr. Chun could hear human voices screaming in the corridors outside. Her crew, her friends, were dying while she stood in relative safety. The knowledge filled her with a cold fury she hadn't known she was capable of. "Park," she said sharply. "Can you lock down the medical bay?" "For maybe 2 minutes," the engineer replied, already working at her console. "But hegemony weapons will cut through our doors pretty quickly. Then we need to make those 2 minutes count." Dr. Chun turned to Korthak, who was testing his newly freed range of motion with obvious amazement. "Can you access the tactical information in your implants without triggering the security protocols?" Korthak's expression grew thoughtful. "Yes. The modifications you made have isolated the memory storage from the control systems. I can see everything now: troop movements, ship configurations, planned operations." His eyes widened. "Doctor, this is not just a recovery mission. This is the beginning of a full-scale invasion of human space." "What?" "The hegemony has been planning this for years. My Pax mission on Zirian Prime was never about helping the Kethvar Empire. It was about field testing new control technologies that they planned to use on humans." Korthak stood up from the surgical table, and Dr. Chun was struck by how different he seemed, more confident, more present, more genuinely alive. "This ship, this crew, you were meant to be the first test subjects." The medical bay doors began to glow as plasma cutters started working on them from the outside. Through her enhanced hearing implants, Dr. Chun could pick up fragments of conversation from the hegemony troops. "Primary target has been compromised technology integrity, uncertain, recommend scorched earth protocol. They're going to destroy everything," Park said, her voice hollow. "Even if they can't recover the technology intact, they won't let us keep it." Korthak moved to stand between the glowing door and the two humans, his massive frame radiating protective menace. "No," he said quietly. "They will not." Dr. Chun realized she was seeing something unprecedented, a being specifically engineered for absolute obedience, making a conscious choice to defy his creators. But more than that, she was seeing the person Korthak had always been underneath the conditioning, the individual the hegemony had tried so hard to erase. "There has to be a way out of this," she said, her mind racing. "Some weakness in their plan that we can exploit." "There is," Korthak replied, though his voice carried a note of grim resignation. "The hegemony assault ship is operating with a skeleton crew. Most of their forces are aboard this vessel now. If someone could reach their ship—" "You're talking about a suicide mission," Park interjected. "No," Korthak said, his golden eyes meeting Dr. Chen's. "I'm talking about a rescue mission. Their ship contains the control codes for the neural implants of every Vorthak warrior in their service. If those codes could be modified, transmitted to the Vorthak ships, throughout the galaxy. Dr. Chun felt her heart skip as she understood what he was suggesting. You could free them all. All of them. Every warrior they have enslaved. Every species they have conquered through neural modification. Korthak's voice carried a note of wonder, as if he was seeing possibilities he had never dared imagine before. The hegemony's greatest strength could become their greatest weakness. The plasma cutters were nearly through the medical bay doors now. In seconds, hegemony assault troops would pour through, and everything would be over. But Dr. Chun found herself thinking not just about survival, but about opportunity. The neural interface equipment, she said suddenly, can we use it to boost the transmission range of the control codes? Engineer Park's eyes lit up with understanding. If we could tap into the ship's communications array, yes, it might be possible to reach every hegemony vessel within several light years. Do it, Dr. Chun ordered. Korthak, can you access the control codes? Already done. Korthak replied, his implants interfacing directly with the medical bay's computer systems. But transmitting them will take time we do not have. The door finally gave way, and armored figures began pouring through the breach. Dr. Chun had her first clear look at hegemony assault troops, and the sight filled her with cold dread. They were clearly once living beings, but so heavily modified with cybernetic implants that little organic material remained visible. They moved with perfect coordination, their weapons tracking in precise patterns. Biological assets identified. One of them announced in a voice that was purely synthetic. Commencing termination sequence. That's when Korthak moved. Dr. Chun had known intellectually that the alien warrior was physically formidable, but seeing him in action was something else entirely. Without the neural conditioning limiting his responses, Korthak fought with a fluid grace that seemed to combine instinct, training, and pure creative improvisation. The first hegemony trooper never had a chance to fire his weapon. Korthak's claws raked across the figure's chest, tearing through armor that was supposed to be proof against heavy weapons. The second trooper managed to get off a plasma burst, but Korthak was already moving, using the first trooper's body as a shield while he closed the distance. Fascinating. One of the remaining troopers observed with clinical detachment. Subject exhibits behavior patterns inconsistent with standard Vorthack conditioning. Recommend immediate termination. But even as the words left its synthesized voice, Korthak was among them. Dr. Chun watched in amazement as the massive alien warrior fought, not just with his physical capabilities, but with genuine tactical intelligence. He used the confined space of the medical bay to his advantage, preventing the troopers from using their superior numbers effectively. Upload progress? Dr. Chun called to Park, who was frantically working at her console while plasma fire erupted around them. 60%, and climbing, Park replied. But we need more time. Korthak heard her and seemed to make some internal calculation. Dr. Chun, he called, even as he grappled with two troopers simultaneously. There is something you must know. The neural pathways you created in my brain, they're not just freeing me from conditioning. They are evolving. What do you mean? I can feel connections forming with other modified beings. The quantum entanglement properties you use to bypass my conditioning are creating a network. Korthak threw one trooper into the wall with enough force to dent the metal, then grabbed the weapon from another. If I can reach the hegemony ship, I might be able to do more than just transmit control codes. I might be able to create a permanent network of free thought among all modified beings. Dr. Chun felt her breath catch. A telepathic rebellion. Something like that. Korthak's voice carried a note of excitement, even as he fought for their lives. But only if the upload completes successfully. The battle in the medical bay was fierce but brief. Korthak's combination of physical prowess and tactical intelligence, enhanced by his newly freed mental capabilities, proved too much for the assault troops. But Dr. Chun could hear more forces approaching through the corridors outside. 90%, Park announced. Just a little more time. Time we do not have, Korthak replied, listening to the approaching footsteps with his enhanced hearing. The next wave will be larger, better prepared. He turned to face Dr. Chun directly. There is only one way to ensure the upload completes. Dr. Chen realized what he was suggesting and felt her heart sink. No, there has to be another way. Perhaps, but this way is certain. Korthak moved to the medical bay's emergency systems panel. I can trigger a containment breach that will seal this section of a ship. It will give you the time you need to complete the transmission, and trap you in here with whatever's left of their assault force. Dr. Chen protested. Yes, but Dr. Chen. Korthak paused, and for a moment his expression was purely human despite his alien features. What you have given me today is worth any price. For the first time in my existence, I am choosing my own path. I am fighting for something I believe in, not because I was programmed to do so. Park looked up from her console. 95%. Just hold on a little longer. The sound of approaching footsteps was getting louder now, and Dr. Chun could hear the mechanical voices of more hegemony troops coordinating their assault. She looked at Korthak, this being who had been engineered to be a weapon, but had chosen to become something else entirely, and made a decision that surprised even her. No, she said firmly. We're not leaving you behind. Dr. Chen, we freed your mind together. We're getting out of this together. She moved to the medical equipment storage and began pulling out supplies. Park, how much power do we have left in the neural interface generators? Maybe enough for one more major modification, Park replied, confusion evident in her voice. Dr. Chen looked at the quantum resonance equipment, then at Korthak, then at the approaching threat outside their doors. A desperate plan was forming in her mind, dangerous, unprecedented, and probably insane. But it might just work. What if we don't just free the Vorthak warriors, she said. What if we free every modified being in hegemony space? All at once. Korthak's eyes widened. The power requirements would be enormous. It could burn out every system on this ship. 98%, Park announced. Dr. Chun could see the doubt in Korthak's eyes, but also something else, hope. Not just for himself, but for his entire species and every other being the hegemony had enslaved through neural modification. Can we do it? She asked. Korthak was quiet for a moment, consulting the tactical information now freely available in his enhanced memory. Yes, he said finally, but the neural link required would have to be incredibly strong. Stronger than anything the equipment was designed for. How strong? It would require a direct quantum entanglement between my neural implants and every other modified being in hegemony space. The feedback could destroy my mind entirely. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. But if it works? If it works, the hegemony loses control of millions of enslaved beings in an instant. Their entire power structure collapses overnight. Korthak's voice carried a note of awe. It would be the greatest liberation in galactic history. 100%, Park announced. Upload complete. We're ready to transmit. The footsteps outside had stopped. Dr. Chen realized that the hegemony forces were preparing for a coordinated assault that would overwhelm their defenses completely. Whatever they were going to do, they had to do it now. She looked at Korthak one more time, seeing not just the alien warrior, but the friend he had become. Are you ready to change the galaxy? Korthak's response was a smile that was both fierce and gentle. With friends like you, how can I fail? As Dr. Chun initiated the transmission sequence that would either free millions of enslaved beings or destroy them all, she couldn't help but think that humanity had just passed its most important test. Not a test of strength or intelligence, but of compassion, the willingness to risk everything for the freedom of others. The quantum transmission array built into the medical bay's neural interface equipment began to glow with an intensity that Dr. Chun had never seen before. Every available power conduit on the ship was being rerouted to support the massive energy requirements of what they were attempting, a simultaneous neural liberation of potentially millions of enslaved beings across hegemony space. Korthak stood in the center of the array, his massive form surrounded by swirling patterns of quantum energy that danced across his fur like living lightning. The neural implants in his skull were glowing so brightly they were visible through his flesh, creating an ethereal crown of light around his head. Connection established with primary hegemony neural network, he reported, his voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. The sound of someone speaking across multiple dimensional frequencies simultaneously. I can feel them, Dr. Chun. Thousands, millions of minds locked in artificial prisons of conditioning and control. Engineer Park watched her monitors with growing alarm. Power consumption is exceeding safe parameters. If we maintain this level much longer, we'll risk a cascade failure of the ship's entire electrical system. Before Dr. Chun could respond, the medical bay doors finally gave way completely, and a new wave of hegemony assault troops poured through the breach. But these weren't like the previous attackers. These figures moved with a coordination that was almost supernatural, and their weapons were charged with energy signatures that made the air itself crackle with potential violence. Enhanced Tactical Response Team. Korthak observed without breaking his concentration on a neural transmission. They're using modified Vorthak warriors. Dr. Chun felt her blood turn cold as she recognized what he meant. The figures advancing on them weren't just cybernetically enhanced soldiers. They were enslaved members of Korthak's own species, their minds locked in the same kind of conditioning he had just escaped from. I can reach them, Korthak said, his voice growing strained as he attempted to maintain the galactic-scale neural transmission while simultaneously trying to communicate with the enslaved warriors. But dividing my focus weakens the primary liberation signal. Do it anyway, Dr. Chun ordered without hesitation. We don't leave anyone behind. The lead Vorthak warrior, a female slightly smaller than Korthak but still massively powerful, raised her weapon toward Dr. Chun. The blue glow of hegemony control was clearly visible in her eyes, but as Korthak's liberation signal reached her, that glow began to flicker. Sister, Korthak called out, speaking in the natural Vorthak language for the first time since Dr. Chun had known him. Remember who you were before they took your choices away. The female warrior's weapon wavered, and Dr. Chun could see confusion replacing the artificial certainty in her expression. Behind her, the other enslaved Vorthak were experiencing similar disruptions to their conditioning as Korthak's signal reached their neural implants. But the effort was taking its toll. Korthak's massive form was beginning to tremble, and Dr. Chun could see blood beginning to leak from his nose and ears as the strain of maintaining multiple quantum neural connections pushed his modified brain to its limits. Korthak, you're pushing too hard, she warned. The neural pathways can't handle this much stress. Almost there, Korthak replied through gritted teeth. The primary liberation signal is reaching the outer systems. I can feel the awakening beginning. On her monitors, Engineer Park was tracking the transmission's progress across the galaxy. Signal propagation is exceeding our most optimistic projections. The quantum entanglement effect is cascading through the hegemony network faster than their systems can compensate. Dr. Chun watched in amazement as indicators lit up across the star charts, each one representing a location where enslaved beings were experiencing their first moments of genuine free will in decades or centuries. It was working. They were actually freeing millions of minds across known space. But the cost was becoming apparent. Korthak was no longer just trembling. His entire body was convulsing as the neural feedback from millions of simultaneous liberation experiences flooded through his consciousness. The artificial crown of light around his head was pulsing erratically, and Dr. Chun could see that the quantum energy patterns were becoming unstable. I'm losing him, she announced, moving toward the neural interface controls. The feedback is too intense. His brain can't process this much input. No, Korthak said, his voice barely a whisper, but carrying absolute determination. Must complete the liberation. Too many have suffered too long. The enslaved Vorthak warriors in the medical bay were now completely free of their conditioning, their weapons lowered as they stared around the room with the confused wonder of beings experiencing genuine choice for the first time in their adult lives. The female warrior who had been about to kill Dr. Chun was now looking at her with an expression of profound gratitude. The hegemony ship, she said in accented, but understandable standard galactic. Their command crew is in panic. The neural rebellion has spread to their own modified personnel. Through the ship's communication system, Dr. Chun could hear the chaos erupting throughout the galaxy as the liberation signal reached its targets. Emergency broadcasts were flooding the communication channels as hegemony installations found themselves suddenly facing freed slaves who vastly outnumbered their pure-born controllers. "It's working," Park announced with barely contained excitement. Hegemony forces are reporting massive systemic failures across 17 sectors. Their entire command structure is collapsing as their enslaved troops regain free will. But even as victory seemed within reach, Dr. Chun could see that Korthak was failing. The massive alien warrior was now on his knees, his consciousness stretched across countless neural connections, trying to guide and support millions of newly freed minds as they struggled to understand their liberation. "He's dying," Dr. Chun said, reading the biometric data from his implants. "The neural feedback is causing cascading brain damage. If I don't disconnect him now, we'll lose him completely." The freed Vorthak female warrior stepped forward. "I am Thyra, once of the Starfall Pack. This one has given us back our souls. We cannot let him die for this gift." "Then, help me," Dr. Chun said immediately. "Your neural implants are similar to his. If we could distribute the load across multiple minds." "A pack link," Thyra said with immediate understanding. "The old way, before the conditioning taught us to stand alone." She looked at the other freed warriors. "Brothers, sisters, will you join minds with me to save our liberator?" Without hesitation, the other Vorthak warriors moved to surround Korthak, their own neural implants beginning to glow as they established quantum connections with his overtaxed brain. Dr. Chun watched in fascination as the biometric readings for all of them began to stabilize. "Incredible," Park breathed. "They're creating a distributed neural network. The processing load is being shared across all of them." With the immediate strain reduced, Korthak was able to lift his head and meet Dr. Chen's eyes. "The liberation is complete," he said, his voice carrying a note of wonder. "Every enslaved being in hegemony space has been freed. The network we created will ensure they can never be re-enslaved through neural conditioning." "And the cost?" Dr. Chen asked, though she could already see the answer in his exhausted but peaceful expression. "The neural connections we forged cannot be undone. We are linked now, all of us who participated in the liberation. We can feel each other's thoughts, share each other's experiences." Korthak smiled, and it was the most genuinely happy expression Dr. Chen had ever seen on his alien features. "We are no longer alone." Captain Vasquez's voice crackled over the communication system. "Medical Bay, this is the bridge. We're receiving surrender signals from the hegemony assault ship. Apparently their entire crew has defected. Can someone explain what the hell is happening down there?" Dr. Chun activated her comm unit. "Captain, we've just witnessed the largest liberation in galactic history. The hegemony's system of neural slavery has been permanently dismantled. And our unusual patient?" Dr. Chun looked at Korthak, who was now surrounded by his pack brothers and sisters, all of them linked in a mental network that transcended anything the hegemony had ever achieved through their crude conditioning technologies. "He's exactly who he chose to be." Over the following hours, as the immediate crisis passed and the full scope of what they had accomplished became clear, Dr. Chen found herself trying to process the magnitude of the changes rippling across the galaxy. The hegemony's empire, built on the systematic enslavement of conquered species, was collapsing as their enslaved populations not only regained their freedom, but actively turned against their former masters. But, perhaps more importantly, the neural network that Korthak and the other Vorthak had created was serving as a beacon for other liberated beings. Species that had been isolated and controlled for generations were suddenly able to communicate with each other, to share knowledge and experiences across vast distances of space. "It's like a galactic internet," Park explained excitedly as she monitored the growing network. "But instead of transmitting data, they're transmitting consciousness, emotion, genuine understanding between species that have been enemies for centuries. Thyra approached Dr. Chun as she was reviewing the medical data from the liberation procedure. Dr. Chun, on behalf of all freed beings, we wish to express our gratitude. But we also wish to understand something. What's that? Why did you risk everything for us? Your species gains no advantage from our freedom. Indeed, you have made powerful enemies by defying the hegemony. Dr. Chun considered the question, then smiled. Because that's what friends do. And because we believe that every being deserves the right to choose who they want to be, even when that choice leads to conflict. Especially then, freedom isn't always comfortable or safe. But it's the foundation of everything else that matters. Love, creativity, growth, the chance to become more than you were yesterday. Thyra nodded slowly. The Vorthak have much to learn about freedom. Will you teach us? We'll learn together, Dr. Chun replied. That's what friends do. As the Hippocrates set course for Earth, carrying the first delegation of free Vorthak to meet with human leadership, Dr. Chun found herself reflecting on how profoundly everything had changed. Humanity had entered galactic politics not through conquest or superior technology, but through an act of compassion that had reshaped the balance of power across known space. The hegemonies still existed, but they were now facing rebellions on thousands of worlds as their former slaves demanded not just freedom, but justice for generations of oppression. The HFY and Zephyrian empires had declared an immediate ceasefire as they tried to understand the new political landscape. And somewhere in the depths of space, millions of beings were experiencing genuine choice for the first time in their lives. Do you think we did the right thing? Park asked as they watched the stars stream past in hyperspace. I think, Dr. Chun replied, we did the human thing. And sometimes that's the same as the right thing. Vorthak approached them, moving with the easy confidence of someone who had finally found his place in the universe. Dr. Chun, the network has reached a consensus about something important. What's that? We wish to establish a permanent alliance with humanity, not as subjects or servants, but as equals united in the cause of protecting freedom throughout the galaxy. Vorthak's golden eyes were serious but warm. Will you speak for us when we reach your world? Dr. Chun felt a surge of pride and responsibility that took her breath away. They had set out to save one wounded alien warrior and somehow ended up becoming ambassadors for a new kind of civilization, one based on choice rather than control, cooperation rather than domination. I'll do my best, she said. But remember, the most important voice in any discussion about your future is your own. Vorthak's smile was radiant. Yes, I'm beginning to understand that now. As the medical ship carried its precious cargo toward humanity's home system, Dr. Chun couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. The liberation of the hegemony's slaves had created a power vacuum that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. There would be challenges ahead, conflicts to resolve, and the constant work of building understanding between species that had been enemies for centuries. But for the first time since humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel, they were not just observers in the galactic community. They were participants, partners, friends to beings who had chosen freedom over security and hope over despair. And at the center of it all was the friendship between a human doctor and an alien warrior who had discovered that the greatest victory was not conquering your enemies, but choosing to become something better than what others made you. 6 months after the Great Liberation, as historians were already calling it, Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Freedom Station, watching ships from dozens of different species dock at the massive orbital facility. What had started as an emergency medical intervention had grown into something that was reshaping the entire galaxy. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built with technology freely shared by the liberated species working together for the first time in centuries. HFY quantum generators powered Zephyrian environmental systems, while Vorthak defensive technologies protected research labs where human scientists worked alongside beings whose names couldn't even be pronounced in Earth languages. The latest reports from the Outer Rim are encouraging, said Ambassador Thyra, approaching with the fluid grace that all freed Vorthak seemed to possess. In the months since her liberation, she had become not just a political leader, but a dear friend. 17 more hegemony outposts have declared their independence and requested membership in the Free Worlds Alliance. Dr. Chen nodded, though her attention was focused on a particular docking bay where a familiar ship was requesting permission to land. The heart of the pack bore scars from its recent mission to the hegemony core worlds, where Korthak and his growing network of liberated warriors had been helping to evacuate populations from planets where die-hard hegemony loyalists were making desperate last stands. "How many did they manage to bring out this time?" she asked. "Nearly 10,000, Thyra replied. "Mostly children of enslaved species who were being prepared for neural modification." Korthak refused to leave any behind. That was so typical of him, Dr. Chun thought with a mixture of pride and worry. In the months since the liberation, Korthak had become something of a legend throughout the galaxy. The war dog who had chosen freedom and then dedicated his life to ensuring that choice was available to everyone else. But she could see the toll it was taking on him, the weight of responsibility he carried for every being who looked to him for guidance. The docking bay opened, and Dr. Chun watched as Korthak emerged from his ship, surrounded by the usual crowd of refugees, reporters, and admirers. But even at this distance, she could see something was different about him today. His posture was more upright, his movements more purposeful than they had been in recent weeks. "Something's changed," she observed. Thyra's ears twitched in the Vorthak equivalent of a smile. "Indeed, he has been in communication with the neural network for 3 days now. Something significant is being planned." Dr. Chun made her way through the station's corridors toward the docking bay, noting how naturally the various species seemed to interact now. A group of young Kethvar were playing some kind of game with Zephyrian children while their parents discussed trade agreements in a dozen different languages simultaneously translated by the quantum communication systems that linked all member worlds of the Free World Alliance. It was the kind of scene that would have been impossible under hegemony rule, where different species were kept isolated and suspicious of each other. But freedom, Dr. Chun had learned, was contagious. Once beings experienced the possibility of choice, they began to imagine possibilities that had never existed before. She found Korthak in one of the station's memorial gardens, a quiet space dedicated to all those who had died under hegemony enslavement. He was standing before a wall of quantum crystal that contained the memories of thousands of individuals who had been lost to the conditioning process, their final thoughts preserved as a reminder of the cost of tyranny. "You look like someone who's made a difficult decision," Dr. Chen said, approaching slowly. Korthak turned to face her, and she was struck by the change in his expression. The uncertainty and pain that had shadowed his features for months had been replaced by something she could only describe as peace. "The network has reached a consensus," he said. "We have decided to attempt something that has never been done before." "What kind of something?" "The hegemony core worlds are heavily fortified and defended by loyalist forces who would rather destroy entire planets than allow them to be liberated. Traditional military assaults would result in massive casualties on both sides." Korthak paused, gathering his thoughts. "But there's another way." Dr. Chun felt a chill of premonition. "What are you thinking?" "The quantum neural network we created during the liberation has grown far beyond what we originally intended. We now have the ability to establish instantaneous consciousness transfer across galactic distances." Korthak's golden eyes met hers directly. "We believe we can offer the remaining enslaved populations a choice without setting foot on their worlds." "Consciousness transfer?" "Korthak, that's dangerous, yes. Unprecedented, certainly. But consider the alternative, a war that could last for generations and cost millions of lives." Korthak moved to stand beside the memorial wall, his massive hand resting gently on the crystal surface. "These beings died because they were never given a choice. We have the power to ensure that their sacrifice was not in vain." Dr. Chen studied her friend's profile, seeing the determination there, but also something that worried her. "What aren't you telling me?" The consciousness transfer would require someone to serve as a focal point for the network, a guide to help the newly liberated minds navigate the transition from slavery to freedom. Korthak's voice remained steady, but Dr. Chun could hear the underlying emotion. The process would burn out the neural implants of whoever volunteers to serve as the focal point, which means they would lose their connection to the network permanently. They would become ordinary again. Dr. Chun felt her heart sink as she understood what he was really saying. You're volunteering to be the focal point. The network has already chosen me. I am the one who began the liberation, and I am the one who must complete it. Korthak turned to face her fully. Dr. Chun, what you gave me 6 months ago was the greatest gift imaginable, the ability to choose my own path. Now I choose to use that gift to give others the same opportunity. But you'll lose everything that makes you special. Ugh.